What is up? Good morning. Welcome to week 8, week 7. What do you know? Another nightmare. No bye weeks to worry about for week 8, but we still have plenty of injuries. Far too many. Chances are, if you're watching the show right now, you need a wide receiver, and we are here to help. And guess what? I'm going to do my best to actually be nice to the chat today. Let's get into it. What is up? Good morning and welcome to WireTapped, Club Fantasy's weekly waiver wire show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, Joshua Hudson, though you have missed a week this year, so I guess it's not as always, but as usual, Joshua Hudson.
You know, considering everything I went through, missing only 1 week of this show, actually pretty damn impressive.
That's impressive, yeah. When you consider that you lost just about everything in a hurricane, you're now on your, 4th location of filming for Club Fantasy?
Feels like it.
2024 season. So no, very much true. Glad to have you. How'd week 7 go for you, Josh? Do you hate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now like everybody else?
You know what? I don't have any of them rostered. I have Baker Mayfield in a dynasty league, but I don't have any shares of Mike Evans. I've always stayed away from him just because of the boomer bust mentality.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never really scooped up any Chris Godwin because I went Deontay Johnson instead.
And that's fair. They were going in similar circles, and right now it looks like that might have worked out for you.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of working out, for Caesar, went up against Dicker the Kicker last night, pulls out a .14 win. Blessed indeed. Congratulations.
I had one last week where I won by .04.
Ooh.
Literally 1 passing yard. And then in another league lost by .12. So 3 passing yards.
I saw one crazy game like that this season. I do not remember the score anymore. I don't know if Joe is complimenting Caesar or if he also won yesterday. But if you won, Joe, congratulations. I'm sure you're in plenty of leagues. I'm sure you won in one league. So congratulations on that. Before we get started on the show, Josh, go ahead and let everybody know about that partnership with Trophy Smack.
Absolutely. Our sister site, Women of Fantasy Football and Trophy Smack, have a great new arrangement. Check out the Ladies League page. Go to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Hit that little plus sign. It'll drop down. You'll see Ladies League. It's a really cool rose gold championship belt. Actually, may possibly have a little surprise coming from Trophy Smack to debut on one of these shows here soon. So just stay tuned. But check out all of their achievement-based products that they have: championship belts, trophies, championship rings, wall art. They call it Wall Smack, so you can customize everything. Live it up. Treat the losers of your league to, greeting cards and banners and wrestling onesies to embarrass the fuck out of them. Get your commissioner something because they have the most thankless job probably in the world, truthfully, but definitely in fantasy football. So show a little love and appreciation. Once again, it's trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Any and all of these commissions that we earn through this deal, that's what's going to help us send all of these amazing women to events like the Super Bowl, the NFL Draft, the Scouting Combine. And they're there providing content for not only Club Fantasy, but also Women of Fantasy Football. So it's a really cool thing that we have going on with Trophy Smack. So show us some love, show some support. trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF.
Perfect. This is the Waiver Wire Show, folks. We're going to talk about the best waiver wire pickups. We do sprinkle in some observations from week 7, some things we're looking forward to in week 8. We also answer any question that gets dropped in the chat. Joe, I see your question. I know you're going to ride with us the whole show, so I'm going to get to that one when we get to the running back section because it just makes more sense for the running back section. But if you guys have questions, get them in the chat. If the chat gets very, very busy, we do have super chat if you guys want to jump the line. Probably not going to get that busy today, but hey, if you want to give us some money,
hey, we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, I was going to say. But let's talk about the Britt's article. Britt Flynn drops her top 5 waiver claims every single week on clubfantasyffl.com. We like to start the show off because these are probably the top claims this week, though there was a little bit of new information towards the end of last night. Britt writes her article on Monday night. So there's a little bit of missing information here, but I think she hits the nail on the head with Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, the wide receivers out of San Francisco. You got Brandon Ayuk, who is now out for the year. Jennings is available in about 50% of leagues. Pearsall is out there between 80 to 90% of leagues. These are the types of players you're looking for. There's a big opening in San Francisco. We saw what Jennings could do without Brandon Ayuk earlier in the season. Romeo Doubs, super available and everywhere but sleeper. So keep an eye out for Romeo Doubs. Obviously, he's getting more involved in the offense. Tyler Goodson appears to be the passing down back, as Josh actually perfectly called last week on this show. 90% of leagues you can find him in. Ray Davis scores another touchdown this week, 85% of leagues, 70 to 85% of leagues. And Hunter Henry seems to be a favorite out there in New England. He's out there in about 70% of leagues, the first tight end to make the article this entire season. So if you're in need of a tight end, Hunter Henry was great until 5 minutes left in the game. Not even 5 minutes. 5 seconds left in the game last night, and there might be a better tight end now. And she throws in Cedric Tillman as kind of a last thing for the Browns as her bonus pick. I think we might like Cedric Tillman a little bit more than that, Josh, but you want to get us started by talking about Romeo Doubs.
Yeah. So what was it? 2 weeks ago when he was a healthy scratch in a way, there was the suspension or whatever, and detrimental to the team and all this kind of stuff. Fact of the matter is Romeo Doubs is one of their staples at wide receiver. For the last couple of years, it's basically been Doubs and Watson on the outside, but the two consistent cogs in this Green Bay passing offense are Romeo Doubs, and this year it's Jaden Reed. Both of them are running about 80% snap shares. Look, nobody on this team has more than a 19% target share. It is a toss-up every single week. Who's going to see the production? Who's going to get the touchdowns? 2 weeks ago, Romeo Doubs scored 2 touchdowns. Last week, it was Dontavian Wicks scored the touchdown. And he's only running about 50% because him and Christian Watson are alternating. So nobody freaking knows who's going to be Jordan Love's go-to guy when it comes to this team. But and I've been saying this for 2 years, if there's any wide receiver that is at least has anything resembling consistency, it is Romeo Doubs, because he's on the field more than everybody else. Sometimes when you have these, toss-up type wide receiver rooms, running back rooms, whatever it is, lean into the snap share, lean into the consistent targets, even if those targets are only, 5, 6, 7 in a game. The last 2 weeks, Romeo Doubs has scored over 17 fantasy points, which probably tells you he's going to have like 4 this week. So I don't know why the fuck we're talking about him. But you know what? We're going to talk about him anyway. There's a level of consistency here. He is at minimum a bench stash. You're going to run into more bye weeks heading into week 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then, of course, in 14 again. So it makes sense to at least roster him. But the amount of wide receiver injuries, you're going to end up dealing with a lot of inconsistencies. There are worse options than Romeo Doubs, especially when Jordan Love is throwing the football the way that he's throwing the football.
Yep. And that kind of brings me to Smitty's question, because we're getting into that weird stage of fantasy football, Josh, where the waiver wire is thin. I don't know that there's going to be an injury that's going to all of a sudden catapult a guy to just be fantastic. This might be, we keep saying it's the last opportunity, but you have Britt's 5 guys, and I think we have to throw Cade Otton and Jalen McMillan into this conversation. Are any of the players this week worth top waiver priority, or is there something to be had with waiting until the trade deadline?
I think for me this week, if Jawan Jennings is still out there, if Jawan Jennings is still out there, he to me is the guy, simply because we know that the guy ahead of him, which is Brandon Ayuk, is done for the year.
Gone.
So we know that Debo is going, he's going nuclear. There's no 2 ways about it. When Brandon Ayuk is off the field and Debo is on it, Debo is like a top 7 wide receiver in fantasy football. But you know what? He just got hospitalized for pneumonia, which typically is an outpatient type of scenario. Yeah. So that tells me that maybe Debo's not even 100% this week, right? A lot of us are desperate times call for desperate measures when it comes to fantasy football right now.
Yeah.
That go-to guy's got to be Jawan Jennings, right? It has to be, in my opinion. I think Ricky Pearsall by season's end will probably overtake this. He was the guy that they spent a first-round pick on. They want to get him involved. This is why they got him, because they believe that he can be the person that helps lead this offense. But the dude is coming back from a freaking gunshot wound to the chest. It's going to be slow going. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, Jauan Jennings to me feels like that guy. I'll get to it in my little what did we learn from week 7. But if you've got any fab left, I'm probably putting all of it on Jauan Jennings if he's available. I just didn't want to double up the thumbnail because we had Jauan Jennings on it like 4 weeks ago.
That makes sense. I was wondering why it was Dobbs all of a sudden, but that makes a lot more sense. Let's get Jonathan Santiago has a trade question. Give up McLaurin and Walker for Amari Cooper and Pickens. If this is Kenneth Walker, this is the hardest no of my entire life.
What other Walker is it?
Yeah, and it's I'm running through my head. Yeah, no, do not make that.
You're not trading Kenneth Walker.
You're giving up the best piece on both sides. This is a terrible trade, Jonathan. This person is trying to take advantage of you. Do not do this trade.
Yeah.
This is
what they're trying to do is sell high on Pickens. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
No, you're keeping Walker, plain and simple.
Yeah, don't do that. And I'm not going to make Mozzarella Fella wait all the way to wide receivers, mainly because maybe the best screen name we've ever dealt with at Club Fantasy. So
love it.
How are we prioritizing Demario Douglas, Khalil Shakir, Rashad Bateman, Keon Coleman? He needs to because all of his wide receivers broke this weekend.
Oh man, this hurts.
I think I was gonna say flip the list on its head. I like Coleman now. I think Bateman and Douglas might be my favorite two from this list, though. Bateman's looking good in that offense. So
yeah, I mean Bateman's been showing up. Zay Flowers left last night's game with an injury, so there could very well be a lot of room for Bateman to take a step up in that offense. We talked a little bit yesterday about when you bring in a legit wide receiver one, takes away attention on defense to open things up for your 2s and 3s. Fun fact: Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman didn't actually share the field together on any of their targets.
We were loving on how Amari Cooper opened things up for Keon Coleman. He did not.
Although, if I'm not mistaken, the one target to Amari Cooper, the touchdown, I think Coleman was actually on the field for that, because Coleman was the one that was telling Cooper what route to run. I remember seeing that.
What's funny is I was going to make the joke the other way around. Amari Cooper taught Keon Coleman, but it was actually Keon Coleman teaching Amari Cooper.
But yeah, I mean, look, this offense needs to throw the football. So I think Coleman is kind of back in those good graces. Yeah. But again, he was a rookie. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that a rookie struggles to begin the season.
You have to have patience with rookies.
Yeah, you have
We've
to
been
have
saying
patience.
this.
And this is what we talk about all off season. If you're going to go draft these rookies, you got to be patient.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of it. They're rookies. They're learning a new league. They're learning a new system. Like, they have talent, but there's still work to be done. Maybe this is the over the hump game that Keon Coleman needed, that Josh Allen and the Bills needed to see, hey, this dude's got it. We can keep feeding him now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room here. I think Pop Douglas is still going to see a ton of targets. I have a interesting note on him a little bit later. I'm trying to think, what are the matchups next week? Who's Bateman got
right now?
Let me see.
Nobody's on bye. I know that.
Yeah, right. Everybody's playing. Ravens play the Browns. That should be a good matchup for Bateman. Bills play the
Patriots
Seahawks. That's going to be a shootout.
Patriots have the Jets.
Yeah, I think I would go Bateman and Coleman. If you need to, especially for this week, those would be the two guys I would
That's
go
a good point.
Bateman
Yeah, if you're prioritizing this week. Now, if you lost Ayuk and Godwin and you likely just lost 2 wide receivers for the season, I think Demario Douglas deserves a little run up there. I'm going to let
I might go Douglas over Bateman rest of the season.
I'm going to let Daniel Caps jump the line because he has that subscription, and then that's going to lead us. I'm going to go back and get Joe Ortiz's question in here as well. Is Rashad White now playable, Josh, with Godwin's and Evans out? I think
100% he is, because he's their passing down guy. Like, this is what we've been talking about when it comes to Rashad White. He's a terrible running back, but he's a great pass catcher. This is how he was used yesterday. They needed him in the passing game. You're down your top 2 pass catching wide receivers. Guess what's going to happen? Your best pass catching running back is going to see a ton of targets.
And when you have to protect Baker Mayfield, Rashad White, say what you will about him, is also their best pass blocking running back. And
he's going to be on the field regardless of whether fantasy managers want to realize it or not. And
then that lends itself to Joe Ortiz. He had to choose between which Tampa Bay running back to grab off of waivers. I think the bigger question here was dropping Austin Eckler the right call? He picked up Rachaad White. I think for Rachaad White with the current situation in Tampa Bay, it is the right call, though I hate seeing Austin Eckler on waivers, Josh.
Yeah, that definitely hurts, mostly from nostalgia purposes. But I mean, Eckler's got the Bears this week. Bears defense has been surprisingly good. So like I'm fine with that, especially if you need, immediate help. Like we don't know how long Evans is going to be out. He re-aggravated the hamstring. We know that Chris Godwin's going to miss a ton of time. So Rachaad White's going to have multiple week value here. So I mean, I'm fine with it. Truthfully, Eckler really hasn't lit the league on fire right this year. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a fine mate.
I saw somebody on the advanced stats. Eckler was actually very good, though he was ass this week, plain and simple.
I was going to say, against Carolina, he ain't do shit. If you can't do shit against Carolina, you belong on waivers.
That's the Zamir White Club. You get cut. So that's a good point. Smitty says he lost Evans. He does have Addison, Dell, and Flowers should he hit the waiver wire. I don't think it's a priority for you because Evans is out a week. I think you're going to be fine in this situation. And Evans,
I mean, look, we've seen 30-year-olds with hamstring injuries miss 8 weeks.
No,
I'm just saying. I think you're fine with Addison and Dell. I understand people are going to overreact to Dell because he put up a goose egg this week. It happens. It's not great. I truthfully am more worried whether or not how serious the injury that Zay Flowers suffered last night keeps him out. But Addison should be fine. Vikings played.
I forgot Flowers got hurt. He came back in though, right? He kept playing through the injury, if I remember.
Yeah, I think he did, but again, he wasn't very effective. Dude, Lamar Jackson put up 44 fantasy points in my Scott Fishbowl team, and Zay Flowers got me 5, so I couldn't mount a comeback.
Zay Flowers, I did my parlay last night. Zay Flowers at 40 yards felt like a gimme. Nope.
Damn it. Yeah, Addison's got the Rams. That's a good matchup.
Yeah. I love
Texans play the Colts. That's a good matchup.
Yeah, you should see a big bounce back this week.
You should be fine. You're obviously not dropping either of these 3 to pick somebody.
Yeah, that's the other part is who do you have to drop? I don't think you need to rush to the waiver as hard as other people do this week.
Correct.
And then before we move on, Nova Chef, JSN, Douglas, or Madison at the flex. If DK's missing time, there's no way I'm benching JSN.
Yeah, 100%. If DK misses time, which I do think he will probably miss this week, JSN wheels up. I mean, Buffalo is Buffalo. Their defense can. Yeah.
Caesar said his boss had the Lamar Andrews stack, and now she's walking around like she owns
she's the boss. Of course she does.
I love that. All right, Josh, before we get into the big waiver discussion, let's talk about what we learned in week 7. As a reminder, folks, we like to pull a lot of data. Rather, Josh does. I'm more anecdotal. Josh is more analytical, which is hilarious because that is not how we started on this show. But anyway, JJ Zacharyason's data thread, Dwayne McFarland's utilization report, and Ryan Heath's stats recap from Fantasy Points. Josh, what did you learn this week?
All you zero RB nerds, how you looking right now, huh?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Oh, running backs drop like flies, and you can find pop weeks at wide receiver on waivers. How many pop weeks on waivers have we found amongst wide receivers? How many of those stud wide receivers are out or on IR right now?
I think we've had 2. If you count Juju as a pop week, and then what he did last week made up for that. Jawan Jennings and Juju might be our pop week waiver wire guys.
Exactly. Because the pop weeks that took place on waivers, like Dontavian Wicks, once you pick them up and start them, you don't do shit.
Yep.
So, yeah. Look, running backs right now are slaying straight up. Jahmyr Gibbs has been all that and advertised. Montgomery's been great. Derrick Henry's the RB1, if I'm not mistaken. Alvin Kamara has been great. I mean, not all of them were high draft picks, sure, but running backs right now are outproduced. Like we talked about it yesterday. Jahmyr Gibbs was the overall top fantasy player heading into Monday night.
Well, Josh,
which is usually reserved for wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out there though. When you look, the guys who are smashing at running back, Saquon Barkley was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Breece Hall was certainly a first-round pick. Bijan Robinson was a first-round pick, and Jahmyr Gibbs was that guy who was the back end of the first, second round. So 4 of the top 8 were guys you had to pay up for to get. So it feels like it worked.
And the other part were wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb hasn't done shit. Jamar Chase has played.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson has played.
Tyreek Hill 50-50.
Monra's been kind of 50-50. Tyreek Hill obviously dealing with the Tua stuff. But I mean, like, that's right now your first round is looking pretty good outside of Tyreek Hill and CMC, really. So, but yeah, I mean, after that, all your second round wide receivers, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, haven't done anything.
But your second round running backs, Kenneth Walker, I was just looking at
Derrick Henry,
Kyron Williams,
Jonathan Taylor, when healthy, has done okay. Like, yeah. I mean, this just goes to show injuries affect every position.
Yep.
You're not getting ahead of anybody by saying, "Oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z." Like, it's okay to build a balanced roster. It's okay to play the waiver wire.
Stop with this fragility bullshit.
Yeah. It's a violent sport. Shit happens.
Yeah. Well, because you kind of led into it, I'm just going to throw out there. I think we learned that Jahmyr Gibbs might be the best running back in fantasy if David Montgomery misses time.
Dude, you built the case in the offseason. Yep. You built the case. So
I knew his pass catching was going to be great. And then when you get to see him, someone had the funniest tweet the other day. It might have been our friend Kevin Coleman, where it was like, David Montgomery's path to the end zone is a straight line. Jahmyr Gibbs' path to the end zone is over the river and through the woods. But as soon as David Montgomery gets off the field, you get to see Sonic without Knuckles, and all of a sudden he's running right into that end zone. So I love it. Josh, your next point is about how we've been spending that fab.
Yeah. It's that Dave Chappelle gift. Y'all got any of that fab left?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, all these guys are having pop weeks. We're blowing fab because we think there's a trend here, and they're just like shit in the bed, dropping the ball. We were all hyped for Demario Douglas last week. Comes in and has like 2 receptions. I understand he got hurt last minute or he got sick last minute, but like it was the same thing with Juwan Jennings. He explodes and then comes back with like 3 catches. 80 yards, great, but it wasn't like that sustainable type of performance that we feel comfortable putting all that fab on. And a lot of people, as witnessed by the fact that we just mentioned Juwan Jennings in the top 5 waiver section, have already moved off of him. So you wasted all that fab.
So here's what's hilarious, Josh. I went in to look for all my Juwan Jennings shares this week to see where he was available. Those are all leagues where I wasted way too much fab, and I know I'm not going to get him back this week.
Exactly.
But it's crazy how many people cut him.
You've got to go out and you've got to spend all that money on Carson Steele. Andy Reid prioritized him. Next thing you know, they're bringing out Kareem Hunt, and the dude is basically a low-end RB1 for the rest of the season right now because of his utilization. So it's like we're going through and we're trying to outsmart everybody else by getting ahead of things. And look, I'm victim of this. Dontavian Wicks, another one, right? We were saying,
thought he was out, good rest of the season.
He's not even a top 3 guy on his own fucking team right now. So why, it's this.
Yep.
And nothing in return. So
yeah,
just make trades, people.
Yes, exactly. Steven, we did touch on this. It's actually covered in Britt's article if you go to clubfantasyffl.com. So that was one of the top 5 waiver claims. We basically said Juwan Jennings is the number 1 waiver claim this week. There's a little bit of competition, but we've seen what Juwan Jennings can do when these guys have missed time. And as was pointed out by multiple people in the chat and Josh, Deebo Samuel has pneumonia and may miss some time himself. These two might be the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 for San Francisco all of a sudden. Pearsall, you still think there's going to be a learning curve, Josh. So you said that might be better later on in the season.
Yeah, that's why I think Jennings is the priority now.
Yep. My next point was actually, Josh, you inadvertently talked about my next point. Mid-season waivers are tricky. I told you go blow all of your fab on Juju Smith-Schuster, and I stand that could have been a great call. He immediately hurts his hamstring.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda, Ryan.
Yep.
Predict injuries, motherfucker.
Aaron Jones, speaking of predicting injuries, Aaron Jones is supposed to be a 29-year-old running back with a hip injury. So I say Ty Chandler is going to be it. They go out and get Cam Akers. I'm like, maybe Ty Chandler is not going to be it. Turns out neither fucking one of them matters because Aaron Jones is still that dude. Comes out and balls his ass off. And then Demario Douglas, another one of these illnesses. I don't know what he got on the flight over to London, but he gets sick. He catches like 1 or 2 balls in the entire game when he's supposed to be this target hog. we don't know what the fuck we're talking about at this point, but I'm not saying just us. Nobody does, because as Josh pointed out, everybody in the world told you go get Dontavian Wicks. I would love you to show me the analyst that said Carson Steele was a trap. It's just not there. We don't understand what these teams are going to do. The Aaron Jones one chaps me the most because everything pointed to this guy missing time, and instead he comes out and just balls.
Yeah. It's so weird because we've been so conditioned to fade older running backs.
Yep.
Alvin Kamara is balling. He's 29. Derrick Henry, 30 years old. That is the cliff for running backs. Balling.
Derrick Henry should be dead.
Aaron Jones. Yeah. Aaron Jones, 30, balling. Yep. There's like, and the young guys are the ones that are getting hurt. Go figure. Yeah. We live in the upside down. I don't know anything anymore.
And then Josh, speaking of Derrick Henry, Jesus.
Yeah. I bring this up because Jerry Jones has always got to say something. He's got to be the topic of conversation. He was on the radio show this morning talking about, yeah, Derrick Henry looked really good, but I don't really know that he would be doing the same thing in our offense. If you're looking at Derrick Henry right now and saying that wouldn't work in your offense, you need a new fucking offense.
Your offense is broke, dog.
Your offense sucks. Let's be real here. Because all it means, go forward, hand Derrick Henry the football. But more importantly, you were willing to take back Ezekiel Elliott just because he wanted less money versus paying up to get Derrick Henry. And when I'm paying up, I'm talking like $5 million. That dude shits that every morning. Let's be real here.
Yep.
Are you serious? You couldn't pony up for Derrick Henry. Stop making fucking excuses and just say that you suck.
Not to mention, it should be every NFL team's nightmare to put Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson. You should have avoided that at all costs. Yeah. So
absolutely. That's like when I'm going through and making trades in Dynasty, I'm not half the time, I don't even need the player. I just don't want my competition to have that guy.
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
Guys, we're going to get to your questions here in just a moment. Josh, my last point is it's very clear Devontae Adams does not solve all of the Jets' problems, but Amari Cooper might fix what was wrong in Buffalo with that need of a wide receiver one. I think you hit this best. Did Robert Saleh take the defense with him?
Yeah. I mean, Jeff Ulbrich, he's had some head coaching, interviews, rising defensive mind, et cetera, finally given a chance to sort of showcase what he can do. This was clearly Robert Saleh's defense because this defense has no juice. They have been absolutely gashed the last 2 weeks.
It also tells me that Saleh was probably spending too much time on the defense than being a head coach, and that's probably part of the reason he's out the door.
That could very well be it. Absolutely. But that's the thing is, like, you see this a lot. Like, look at D'Amico Ryans, right? D'Amico Ryans runs that defense. He lets Bobby Slowick do his thing on offense. Yep. Dan Campbell, he's kind of a CEO type, right? He lets Aaron Glenn run the defense. He lets Ben Johnson run the offense. When you have competent coordinators, you are able to do that. The problem is he hired fucking Nathaniel Hackett. That was his own goddamn mistake. Plain and simple.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's knock out some of these chats. First of all, everyone who's selling us good morning. Good morning. I'm not going to get all those comments up on the screen, but we love you guys. Gator does point out, make sure you guys smash like. We love the comments. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. We love all the interaction. Josh, Connor Teeter has a trade offer. Trade Drake London for DK Metcalf and Alvin Kamara.
Fucking heartbeat.
I think you have to make this trade even with DK out because you're getting a running back as well. So.
And you're getting the a top 3
5
running back.
Yeah, top 3. Yeah.
Like 1,000% you make this trade. Absolutely.
Quincy Davis is wondering, he's in first place. Congratulations. Should they drop Tank Dell to pick up Jawan Jennings? I think that's a very interesting call. I'll tell you right now, I would rather have Mooney than Tank Dell, especially with Nico Collins coming back. So, Josh, is Jawan Jennings worth dropping Tank Dell? I think he probably is.
I think he is because here's the thing. We know Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. So that tells you Jennings is going to have value rest of the season. Tank Dell. Go ahead.
Once he gave his wide receivers, he barely needs any of these guys. He has Lamb, Debo, now Jennings, Mooney, and has Cooper Kupp coming back. So I think you're in a good spot to say. I don't think you could have made the wrong decision here, but I think Jennings, especially for the Debo manager, becomes even more valuable. So
yeah, definitely. Just in case Debo ends up going out, obviously that's going to shoot Jennings through the moon. But Tank Dell's value when Nico Collins is active is shit. So I'm fine making that move. Again, don't love dropping a valuable piece because Tank Dell's going to have value the next couple of weeks. But as I mentioned yesterday in my sell CJ Stroud rant, this offense really is kind of a mirage at this point.
That's the point I was going to put out there.
Tank Dell.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to put out there, Josh, is if Houston's offense looks like it did in week 7, you made the best call you could have possibly made. Billy got Mike Evans last night, was down 30, had Henry, Evans, and Otten. Obviously, 2 of those 3 balled. I'm shocked. Oh, your opponent had Lamar. Okay, because I'm shocked you didn't win. But yeah, if you're going up against Lamar, if Evans plays the whole game, Millie wins. Or if Juju plays more, I'll take the L on that Juju pick for you there, Millie, because I was telling everybody that was
I'll say it again. We can't predict injuries. That's the shitty thing. I mean, he was probably set to have a pretty decent game. But it's hamstrings. It's soft tissue injuries. Juju's an older wide receiver. Mike Evans is an older wide receiver. Yeah. Plus, nobody knew that Lamar Jackson was going to have 5 fucking touchdowns. That's the other side of it. I mean, he's obviously capable of it. We've seen it. He's won 2 MVPs. But, yeah.
All right, before we get into
the big defense looked really good to start the game, but
they did. It looked like it was going to be an interesting game, and then Baker got a little interception.
And then Lamar said, "Hold this L."
Yep, exactly. Before we get into the big waiver section, Josh, Sport Dog 1000 has a nice room of wide receivers: DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Darnell Mooney, Josh Downs, George Pickens, Christian Watson, and then Nico coming off of IR. Is anyone here droppable or leave it alone? I think Downs and Watson are both droppable for the right commodity. Downs is more droppable to me. That's actually going to come up later on in the show, Josh. So.
Yeah, that's kind of where I would lean as well. We talked about it. We talked about the Green Bay room when we brought up Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and everybody else on that team. Nobody has more than a 19% target share. It's a guessing game week in and week out. It's basically whack-a-mole. So good luck trying to figure out which one of those guys is going to pop week in and week out. But they should all be rostered, right?
Yep.
Josh Downs. Without Joe Flacco, with Anthony Richardson, there is not a single Colts pass catcher I want.
Yep.
I saw a tweet this morning. I can't remember who it was, so I feel bad not being able to give credit. But Anthony Richardson is going to cost Chris Ballard his job.
Yep.
Because, he's had a lot of whiffs lately when it comes to draft picks. That's why the Colts are kind of stuck in mediocrity. But when you miss on the quarterback, that's a problem.
Yep.
And Anthony Richardson has not developed the way that they've wanted him to develop, which, again, I understand because he missed all of last year. Only so much you can do when you're recovering from a shoulder injury. But he's missing it here, too. And that's the big problem. He's not seeing it. So.
All right. You guys are here to listen to waivers. We're finally getting into them, though. We did talk about our top 5 claims earlier on the show. We're going to get to Morse code. These are the way to get a leg up on your league. These are the cheat codes. These are the quarterbacks you are looking for this week. Some of these guys may be traps, and we'll tell you if we think they're traps. There's one guy I want to point out that I don't think you should go after, but these are the names you're going to hear most often on waivers. Russell Wilson, 90% available. Jared Goff, 50% available. Sam Darnold, 50% available. Bo Nix out there in 80% of leagues. Tua Tagovailoa, 70%. Jameis Winston, 99% of leagues. And Drake May, 75% available on Sleeper. I think it's about that on ESPN as well. Josh, you want to talk about Drake May a little bit?
Yeah, since he became the starter, 2 straight weeks, he's been in the top 10. He's getting it done both with his arm and his legs. This is, look, I get it. You don't love the New England offense. They're the struggle bus personified, but look, if he's producing, who the fuck gives a shit?
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's what we want. We want fantasy points. I don't care about your win-loss record in the NFL. I want fantasy points. He was QB7 and QB10 the last 2 weeks.
Someone sent me a question yesterday about Drake May versus Anthony Richardson and showed me his league scoring. And Anthony Richardson in that week 1 scored 24 fantasy points. Drake May scored 17 and 18. I said, Anthony Richardson he asked if it was crazy to drop Rich for May. And I said, Anthony Richardson is never going to be better than he was in week 1. Drake May has room to grow. So go make that ad drop right now.
100%. Yeah. I'm on board with Drake May. I think sometimes too, it's probably going to be very matchup dependent. So I look at him more as like a streaming option. But when we're talking about quarterbacks on waivers, that's really what you're looking at is streaming options, right? Yeah. You look at guys like Nix and Jared Goff, they're QB 13 and QB 12 respectively on the season, right?
Exactly.
Like you don't love starting them week in and week out, but you know that you can get top 10, top 12 production in any given week that's what a streaming quarterback does. Russell Wilson just came off of a 3-touchdown performance.
And gets a cupcake matchup this week. So.
Yeah, against what? The Giants, I think?
Giants, yep.
Yeah.
So the one name I'm going to throw out there is I've been getting a lot of questions lately about Tua Tagovailoa. And I think we are romanticizing this situation a little bit. For weeks, Josh and myself included have been telling you guys, wait till Tua's back. Tyreek is playable. I would never say Jalen Waddle's playable, but I think Millie was the one defending him in the chat for the last couple weeks. But Tyreek Hill's playable. Devon Achane is playable. That does not make Tua Tagovailoa playable. I've been down on Tua this entire time, Josh. In week 1, I believe he was QB9. Let's not forget, before he almost died in week 2, he was a fucking disaster in that game. And last year, leading the NFL in passing, he was still just the QB 14 in fantasy. Tua is not someone that needs to be rostered, even though it's going to make the Miami offense better.
Yeah, there's definitely some level of, I guess, aura, so to speak, because Tua's become such a polarizing player because of the concussion, so he's on everybody's mind. This offense just really doesn't look good at all. Yeah. And it's not even the backup quarterback. It's just in general. I don't know if last year's success just kind of like shot straight to Mike McDaniel's head, but there's something not clicking. Like the running game's not even working. And this is what he was mostly known for in San Francisco. He was the running game coordinator. He helped build that running game and learning from Shanahan. Devon Achane hasn't been the spike week running back that we thought he would be. And he's basically dominated the running back share.
Yeah, I mean, we actually saw good Raheem Mostert this week, which we had not seen from Achane yet. So.
But even then, he didn't even Raheem Mostert didn't even have a 40% running back share.
Yeah,
like he was barely on the field.
Well, I'm using it as Mostert played better than Achane without being on the field. So
yeah, I mean this offensive line is just awful. Like this is right out of the McVay system of my system can offset a bad offensive line as long as they do their fucking job. Well, nobody in Miami's doing their fucking job. So it makes everything that much worse. And when you don't have a solid offensive line in front of a quarterback with a history of injuries, bad things tend to happen. Yeah. So I would use Tua coming back less to actually want to start Tua and more to say, oh, hey, Tua's coming back. You want Tyreek Hill and rid yourself of that problem.
Yeah. Quincy has an interesting question. Superflex League, he has Lamar, May, and Stafford. Would we drop Stafford for Russell Wilson? I'm not dropping a job-safe starting quarterback under any circumstance. I'm getting Russell Wilson for any other player on my team, Josh, before I'm putting Stafford out there for the rest of the game.
Well, I mean, I'm not dropping quarterbacks in Superflex, period.
That's what I mean.
Starting quarterbacks.
So unless you can, let's go on the weird assumption, Josh, that he can only have 3. Would you rather have Russell or Stafford? But the real
I'd
answer
rather have
Russ. Okay, and then the real answer is, Quincy, drop a wide receiver. Do not drop a quarterback. So.
Yeah, I would much rather have Russ. I mean, I understand, the mystique of Fields is behind Russ. Russ put all that to bed. That offense looked better in week 7 than it had in the first 6 weeks combined because Russ knows how to do a play action pass. Justin Fields does not because he takes 18 years to get rid of the football. Russ gets rid of it. He throws it. He knows how to connect with George Pickens and make everybody else better because that's what a veteran quarterback can do. And this team is going to go out and play good defense. You're probably not going to get 3 total touchdowns every week, so don't expect that. But if you I don't think 250 and 2 touchdowns is out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's
so. Depending on your scoring, that's 18 fantasy points. That's perfectly acceptable as a QB2 in Superflex leagues.
What's it? Famelo, F.A. Mello needs to trade Stephon Diggs. What should he go for? I would start by saying, why do you need to trade Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, right. That'd be my first thing.
But I assume you're looking running back. I think David Montgomery with his injury has come back into play all of a sudden, Josh. But Tony Pollard is a name that's been playing well and is typically underrated. Maybe even Aaron Jones with that injury. If you need to improve running back, which is what I assume here, I would look for one of those guys plus maybe try to move Diggs straight for
Josh Jacobs.
Breece Hall. Breece Hall's been down.
Yeah, but the last 2 weeks we've seen
he's
Braylon
done
Allen
enough.
be a ghost. Like it would be Diggs plus to get Hall. So
So I guess
we need
honestly,
more content, basically, Famelo. That's what we're getting at. We need a
yeah,
lot more.
it's hard to trade Diggs right now. I wouldn't. I'm not. We did just talk about this Texans offense could be a disaster, but Diggs has done well enough. Joe Ortiz pours a little water on Juwan Jennings, reminds everybody he did have a hip injury and is not guaranteed to play Week 8. But then Joe takes it a step further, Josh, and says he prefers Jalen McMillan to Juwan Jennings this week, or in waivers.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead on the wide receiver section and just kind of get to this point now.
Yeah.
With Mike Evans out and with Chris Godwin out indefinitely, Tampa Bay basically is trotting out 3 slot receivers.
Yep. McMillan, Sterling Shepard, and Trey Palmer.
Good luck figuring out which one is going to slide into that Chris Godwin role. I know Jalen McMillan has kind of like taken that lead, so to speak, as sort of like the guy that's been kind of running there. But I know Jalen McMillan has the capabilities to kind of move inside and outside, as does Sterling Shepard. Shepard has always proven to be much better out of the slot, as is Trey Palmer.
Yeah.
Baker has a long history with Sterling Shepard. They both played at Oklahoma. Baker recruited Sterling Shepard out of retirement to come play with him in Tampa. So as much as the talent might suggest go get Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard is going to be a thorn in someone's side.
Interesting. I did not know about that connection. That's
they go way back.
I was going to talk about Sterling Shepard when we got to that too, because I think he's the most suited to play kind of that big slot role. But let's talk about running backs first. I do see your trade question. We're going to get to that right after the running back section. Josh, these are the names that are going to be talked about the most. Alexander Madison, 50% available. We've already actually seen his name on this show. Tyrone Tracy, 50% available. Kamani Vidal did not have a good Monday night, 90% available. Roshan Johnson coming off of a bye, 90% available. Ray Davis was covered in Britt's article, 80% available. Sean Tucker, there was that split that we talked about, 90% available. Tyler Goodson, also covered in Britt's article, 90% available. Justice Hill had a hell of a night, 70% available. Jalen Warren looked pretty good this week, 50% available. Dearness Johnson, 82%. Kendry Miller, welcome back, 90%. Pierre Strong, 98% available. And Blake Corum, 77% available. Josh, you like a lot of the guys at the bottom. I'm going to let you talk about everyone I want to throw out there. I told you guys last week I thought Kamani Vidal was a trap. I still think he's a trap. He looked bad last week. J.K. Dobbins hasn't looked great. He's been on and off on whether he looks good or not good, but he's still getting all the work. And they're not going to just go to Kamani Vidal if J.K. Dobbins goes down. I don't think he's the waiver ad that other people think he is.
I mean, he's kind of like what I put down with Blake Corum. He's a deep stash, right? Like the way that they're utilizing J.K. Dobbins, he's basically the 70 to 90% running back share utilization. They're using him in the passing game. They're giving him all the carries. So Vidal becomes the stash because Gus Edwards is out.
Yeah.
So if something were to happen to J.K. Dobbins, I mean, look, you say this all the time. You don't leave starting running backs on waivers.
That's fair. I just don't know that Vidal's the starter.
I mean, that's and sure, that's fair, but we say this all the time. He's a rookie. More importantly, he's a 6th round rookie.
Yeah, you got to have some.
There's going to be a learning curve. There was a reason that he was inactive for the first 5-6 weeks of the season, right? He's getting his bearings. He's learning the system. So many people compared him to a young J.K. Dobbins. So really, he fits right into that role. He's just got to play it. So I think, again, it's a stash play. It's not a plug and play the way that maybe some of these other guys might be if you're that desperate at running back.
Josh, you hit the point pretty hard yesterday that we needed a couple more data points on Tyrone Tracy versus Devin Singletary. What are your thoughts this morning?
Kind of still the same, but I think because you're heading into waivers, now it becomes high risk, high reward, right? So everything I pointed out yesterday was he out-snapped him. He out-produced him. Devin Singletary basically just took a backseat. The game was also a blowout.
Yeah.
We saw them pull Daniel Jones. Devin Singletary basically got pulled as well. Now, was that because they're resting their starters, or are there still effects of that groin injury?
Yeah.
Nobody knows because these teams aren't going to tell us. Right now, they don't have a reason to tell us. So, but you don't want to get stuck holding the bag, right? That's what it boils down to. Tyrone Tracy has produced not just the 2 games that Devin Singletary was out, but for a 3rd game. He's quite honestly the better pass catcher of the 2. And this team is going to be trailing a lot. Within the coming weeks, they're going to make a quarterback change. They flat out bench Daniel Jones. Brian Dable right now is saying all of the right things. He's our guy, blah, blah, blah. You mentioned yesterday the injury insurance.
$24 million.
This is what happened last year with the Broncos and Russell Wilson. When I did my projections this offseason, I only slated Daniel Jones for about 10 games. And this is literally the reason why, because he sucks. This team needs to figure out what they have going on, right? They went out and they prioritized getting Drew Lock. They like Drew Lock. Drew Lock had a pretty solid end of the season couple games with Seattle. Malik Neighbors had 4 catches yesterday or on Sunday against the Eagles. And the Eagles secondary really hasn't been great. So where's the problem lie? Oh, wait, it's the quarterback. So all of this to say, when you're prioritizing a running back on a shitty team, you want pass catching. What does Tyrone Tracy do? He catches passes. So regardless of all these data points right now, if you don't pick him up and he pops, you're fucked.
Yeah.
If your league mate picks him up and he pops, you're fucked.
Yeah,
so pick him up and just bite the bullet if he doesn't pop.
Now, Josh, you like 4 guys that are kind of at the back end of waivers and definitely are more stashes. Would you put Tracy ahead of, and I'm going to let you talk about these guys in turn, Dearness Johnson, Kendrick Miller, Pierre Strong, Blake Corum. Would you put Tracy ahead of all of these guys? Would you put any of them neck to neck?
No, I would put Tracy ahead of all of these guys very firmly. I bring them up for several reasons. One, Dearness Johnson, we still don't know how long Travis Etienne is going to be out. Yeah. Hamstring, soft tissue injuries are very tricky. He is filling that role. He's filling that pass down role. He scored 10 fantasy points in week 7. Obviously, not every week is going to be that. Nobody should be rushing to start Dearness Johnson. But again, it's the running back position. People get hurt. Know the name is really all I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Kendra Miller, he's finally healthy. We've seen what Dennis Allen has said about him. Dennis Allen's not long for this job, plain and simple. This team wants to know what they have in this running back because he didn't play a ton last year, hasn't really played a ton this year. But he outsnapped and was out used by Jamal Williams, basically became a figment, right? Just in the first quarter, because it's really easy to look at, well, the game was a blowout. Let's see what our third string guy has. Outsnapped Jamal Williams 33% to 0. So he was basically the direct backup at that point to Alvin Kamara. So that to me is really the key point when you're looking at how are you weighing the usage versus the fact that it's a blowout, right? Yeah. They're going to get this kid more involved. Alvin Kamara is the talk of trade talks right now because of his age and how the fact that the Saints have lost 5 in a row after a really hot start. So if they end up moving Alvin Kamara,
it's Kendra Miller's show.
It's Kendra Miller season, plain and simple, because they're going to move on and say, all right, we got to see what we have with this kid.
Yeah.
Can he be what we thought he would be when we drafted him as the 3rd running back, I believe, in 2 years ago? So again, these are kind of those like deep name stashes. Same thing with Pierre Strong. He's playing that Jerome Ford role. Ford also dealing with a hamstring. We don't really know how long he's going to be out. Nick Chubb is getting more comfortable as the weeks go on, but we've never seen Nick Chubb utilized in a pass catching role, or at least a prominent pass catching role. So Pierre Strong is kind of that direct backup as well with Jerome Ford out. And Blake Corum is the epitome of a deep stash.
This one
because of the way that Sean McVay uses his RB1, Kieran Williams. He scored in 9 straight games. He's running basically 85 to 90% of the running back touches right now. But Blake Corum is still getting involved, and he is the direct backup. So if something were to happen to Kieran Williams, and we've seen it happen to Kieran Williams, he missed a good stretch of games last year.
5 games.
5 games, exactly. If you get 5 games of 90% running back share out of Blake Corum, you've got a fucking league winner, dude. Plain and simple.
The way Sean McVay uses running backs, Blake Corum cannot be out there.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, guys, we're going to knock out some questions here before we get to wide receivers. First of all, Jay points out something. First of all, I am so proud of you guys. Our viewership has shifted to YouTube where we can actually read your comments and answer your questions. We love each and every one of you. Hit that thumbs up button. Let's get us up on the algorithm, help more people discover us, get some more eyes on this content. Where, as Jay says, it's 40 sets of eyes. Joe Ortiz would like to point out that he lost an eye in fantasy football, so it's actually not 40 sets of eyes. So I love that. All right, Josh, we got plenty of questions to get through here. Adam Stoddard asked a trade question earlier in the show. Should they trade Cooper Kupp and Garrett Wilson for CeeDee Lamb? They already have Chase and Amari Cooper. The rest of their team is Jaden Daniels, J.K. Dobbins, Kareem Hunt, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Tyrone Tracy, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Lad McConkey, Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts. Pretty damn good team. So you're giving up a 2-for-1 to get arguably the best receiver in fantasy.
I would make this trade 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, plus you're freeing up a roster spot if you do that. And
I'm making this point out. You don't know what you're getting with Cooper Kupp.
They are also 5-2, Josh. So they are winning.
You're 5-2 without Cooper Kupp.
Exactly. That's what I was.
You don't need Cooper Kupp. So he's a free piece for that other manager, and you're upgrading from Garrett Wilson to CeeDee Lamb. If you look at this year in comparison to last year, like the first 6-7 games of the season, they're basically the exact same thing. This is right around the time that Dak Prescott gets hot. When Dak Prescott gets hot, CeeDee Lamb gets hot. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Oscar, you just are getting to this a little bit early. We agree.
We're getting there, buddy. We're getting there.
We're going to get to tight end at the end of the show. Another trade question. This one from Joseph Park. Garrett Wilson and Olave for Cooper and T. Higgins.
I'm guessing Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I imagine this is Amari Cooper. I think T. Higgins is probably the best player in this trade right now, Josh. I think you got to get that side of the trade.
Yeah, I think I would take this side too. Even in the limited snaps on Sunday, Amari Cooper, like 4 catches, 36 yards and a touchdown, I believe is what he had. I mean, they're going to get him more involved. He's not going to play 12 snaps every week, obviously. But having him is obviously going to open up that passing game so much more. We just got to solve the drops problem.
Yep.
But, Amari Cooper's had drop problems his whole life. So,
yeah.
Give me the Cooper and Higgins side. I'm not a big Olave fan. Garrett Wilson doesn't have the wide receiver 1 ceiling that he did before the Devontae Adams trade. And quite frankly, that Jets offense, unless it's Breece Hall, I really don't want anybody on.
Yeah, the 11 or 12 points you got out of Garrett Wilson this week is probably what you're looking at for the rest of the season. So,
yeah.
Mateo Feo wants to know, pick up Mike Williams or wait and see where he goes. I thought it was an or question. I think this is a good pickup. You have 3 teams right now, Josh, that desperately need wide receiver. And that is the New Orleans Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Saints are the only one where I'm like, okay, I'm okay. I'm happy I have Mike Williams. If Mike Williams ends up in Kansas City or Tampa Bay, you are ecstatic. And there is information out there. The Jets have to give up more if Mike Williams gets traded to an AFC team. That was, I apologize. I'm wrong. That was the defensive end, the guy who just showed up there.
Hassan Reddick, you mean?
If they had traded Reddick to an NFC team, they would have had to give up an extra pick back to Philadelphia. So they were never going to do that. My apologies. That's not Mike Williams, though. I just got a little confused.
Howie Roseman does it again.
Mike Williams seems very likely, Josh, to end up on one of those 3 teams. And I think you're ecstatic in 2 of those 3.
Yeah, this is basically the Kareem Hunt situation, right? Like you want to try to, it's the chess, not checkers mentality with your league mates. I'm fine doing this if you have an expendable piece. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, I'm not dropping anybody significant to go pick up Mike Williams in hopes that he gets traded. But once the trade deadline passes and he's still on the Jets, you're basically just hoping that the Jets cut him outright so that he can go sign somewhere.
Wherever else.
Yeah, because I mean, he saw a couple targets. I think he had at least 1 catch, but he's running right now behind obviously the big 2, Wilson and Adams, but also running behind Allen Lazard. So he has quite literally 0 value with the Jets.
Yeah. Stephen George wants to know, for a late season stash, who's better, Jalen McMillan or Xavier Legette? After what I saw from Andy Dalton this week, I think it has to be McMillan, Josh.
Yeah, it has to be, especially with the big 2 wide receivers in Tampa going down, and obviously with Godwin missing significant time. Jalen McMillan has a chance to pop. Xavier Legette now has to navigate Adam Thielen potentially coming back.
Yep.
Which that could also be another wide receiver that
He's on.
Is on the trade
I
block.
remember to put him on the wide receiver list as well for our.
Yeah, I mean that's another one. I mean he's 34 years old. Obviously, hurt now, but he's I believe his ability to have his injury window opened up is this week. So there's that.
They won't trade him in division, but Adam Thielen might be the perfect guy to go in there and replace Chris Godwin just as a slower version of that role. So,
yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. But yeah, I would definitely prioritize McMillan this week.
I think that's a better pickup. Military history uncovered. Is Rachaad White worth an ad even if you have Bucky? I think running backs who have fantasy value are always worth an ad. Don't worry about that whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't care if they're on the same team. You go pick up the damn running backs.
And Joe Ortiz says Rachaad White might be the slot wide receiver for Tampa Bay, and that's such a good point. You can't leave him sitting out there. And then finally, Mateo Feo gets us with our Panther players playable against Denver. I don't think so. I think that Broncos defense is so good. I think you're looking at a very similar situation to what we just saw from New Orleans, Josh, where obviously the Panthers have a little bit more talent at wide receiver, but I'm not playing anybody against Denver, at least not happily. Maybe Deontay Johnson, just because
I was going to say Deontay is really the only one that I would feel even remotely comfortable with. But I mean, even then, like I thought it was a good matchup against Washington, and Andy Dalton couldn't see 3 feet in front of him. So like, it just doesn't. Andy Dalton sucks.
First pass of the game.
I mean, this is what we've been talking about. Like, it's not good. So
I tried to pour water on.
Pay attention to the injury report. If Patrick Surtain is playing, you're not starting anybody. If Patrick Surtain is out, I'm okay at least starting Deontay, but I'm not loving it. And that's coming from a big Deontay Johnson.
Big Deontay Johnson fan. Max Leonidas, give up CeeDee Lamb and get Metcalf, Hunt, and Pacheco. Good Lord. I'm going to say no to this one, Josh, just because we don't know how many weeks Metcalf's going to miss. And I don't think Hunt, we said, in a similar trade for Metcalf and Alvin Kamara, I don't think Hunt is necessarily Alvin Kamara.
Hunt's not Alvin Kamara, no.
The other person wasn't CeeDee Lamb either, but it was a decent player. But
yeah, it was Drake London. Who also is, I think, like top 5 in fantasy wide receiver.
Okay, yeah. So
Pacheco is nothing. He's not coming back, and if he does, he's not going to be very effective. I understand the packaging the two together, but right now the way that they're utilizing Kareem Hunt, like basically this Kansas City offense is going through Kareem Hunt.
That's true.
So I mean, if you're desperate at running back and
That's
maybe
fair.
You're like 3-4, 4-3, I think I'm okay making this trade because I do love DK. Knee injury notwithstanding, but the way that they're talking, it shouldn't be anything too significant where he misses more than 1 week. Again, this is very team situational based for me. Again, I never love giving up the best player in the deal. I don't, plain and simple. But I've said this multiple times. I'm a huge DK proponent. I've been touting him all offseason as a top 10 wide receiver, and he's been producing. He produced even this past week while getting hurt.
Yep.
The way they're utilizing Kareem Hunt, even if Pacheco is able to come back, that utilization is going to fall on Pacheco as well. Again, depending on how your team looks, I'm okay making this trade, but I never love giving up the best player.
I would need to be desperate at running back. Josh kind of hit that one on the head. Half-point PPR, Kamara and Mooney for Kenneth Walker and Deebo Samuel as quickly as you can.
Yeah, as quickly as humanly possible. Kamara obviously has been playing great. I don't think Kenneth Walker is that big of a downgrade, if I'm being honest.
I was going to say
from Mooney to Deebo is like through the roof. Yeah, go get Walker and Deebo.
I got to go look at this real quick, Josh, because when I was doing my examination last week, I think Walker was number 1 or number 2 in points per game. Walker is tied with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley as the number 1 running back in points per game.
Go get Kenneth Walker. Yeah, 1,000%.
Yep. And then Mateo, I just want to get this one up here. We love having you, and yes, we certainly speak our minds. It got me into a little trouble last week where I got lippy with a viewer because I had an attitude problem for no reason, but I'm doing much better this week. What are we trading Tyreek for? That's such a tough question right now because now's when everybody wants him, but what are they willing to pay for him, I guess is the question. I would want a decent wide receiver and a running back if I'm giving up Tyreek Hill right now, Josh.
Yeah, the problem is you're not getting that.
Exactly.
So
that's what I'm saying. I don't think this is the right time to trade.
That's the thing. It's like I look at this, and this is where my dynasty brain takes over, right? So like when you're in Dynasty and you're on these like on the cusp of like, all right, I got to make a decision. Am I a contender or a pretender, right? You've got to just kind of take what people are willing to give, plain and simple. Because at that point, you just got to shed the headache, because all it's going to do is going to make your start-sit decisions that much worse. We've been getting so many start-sit questions with Tyreek Hill, and the default is always, we know what Tyreek Hill can do in one play. But there's no level of consistency right now with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
The answer is anybody else, and we keep falling into this fucking trap. Get whatever you can get. Get whatever you can get. If it's Tony Pollard, take it and be happy with it, because you rid yourself of a headache. If it's Garrett Wilson, take it. Get rid of the fucking headache.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to
as long as you're bringing in somebody you can start every week. Don't bring in someone else.
And that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, don't bring in someone else.
You're not trading him for Jalen McMillan, right? You're not doing that.
I wouldn't do it for Garrett Wilson either. I don't trust that, but I get what you're saying with that. All right, guys, wide receiver. This is probably where everybody needs the most help. I'm going to just pour some caution on these guys before we even talk about them. Wide receivers are very interchangeable. So other than the guys that we've spent a lot of time on in the show, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen McMillan, everybody else, they're going to come with their caveats. So Juwan Jennings, 50% available. He's in Britt's article. Ricky Pearsall, 90% available, also in Britt's article. Rashad Bateman, as pointed out earlier in the show, Zay Fowler is also dealing with an injury. Rashad Bateman, 90% available. Alan Lazard, 50%. Khalil Shakir, 50%. Keon Coleman, 50%. Romeo Dobbs, covered in the article on the website, 60% available. I put Jalen Tolbert on here. He's coming off the bye, but it was a shitty game before the bye, 70% available. Demario Douglas obviously got sick, did not have a great game, 60% available. Same team, Kayshon Boutte, 98% available. Adam Thielen coming off the IR soon, 70% available. Trey Tucker, technically a wide receiver too right now, 80% available. Dontavian Wicks burned everybody earlier in the season. They cut him already. He's 80% available. Josh's least favorite player in football, Jerry Jeudy, 50% available. But guess what? Someone from the Browns is going to have to catch the ball. Elijah Moore, 94% available. Cedric Tillman, 99% available. That he is covered in Britt's article. Same situation from Cleveland down to Tampa Bay. Sterling Shepard, 99% available. Jalen McMillan, 99% available. Trey Palmer, 98% available. And then probably the deepest sleeper on this list, depending on what's going on in New Orleans, Mason Tipton, 98% available. So, Josh, we've spent a lot of the show talking about Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and the Tampa Bay group. I think we need to talk about this Cleveland group a little bit, too.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit yesterday about my thoughts on Cedric Tillman and how this was really going to shake out. I mean, your wide receiver one on this team is a tight end. It's David Njoku. That's the guy that you want. But when it comes to the wide receivers, Cedric Tillman is playing the Amari Cooper role. Jerry Jeudy has his role. Elijah Moore has his role. Take the guy who's getting the targets. That's going to be Cedric Tillman. Jerry Jeudy's not good. Elijah Moore, not good. They both have been in this system. They haven't produced. Cedric Tillman gets one opportunity to start and has done more in that time in one game than they've done in their careers in Cleveland, it feels like.
You converted me yesterday. I'm big on Cedric Tillman. I still think there's something for Jerry Jeudy with Jameis Winston at quarterback, just because everything in camp was that Jerry Jeudy was going to be the deep receiver. If they are all right, I found Josh's burner, except the comment before said that Jalen Millen looked good, so that makes it not Josh's burner. But Jeudy is booty. If they're gonna let Jameis, I think Jerry Jeudy is the biggest beneficiary.
But here's the thing: right now, they're not saying that Jameis is going to be the starter.
And I told you guys this yesterday that they were setting this thing up for DTR to take over this team.
So. Yeah. So if DTR comes in as a starter,
it's Cedric Tillman all fucking day.
There you go. So like that's what I'm saying. Like right now, I'm going to prioritize Tillman, and I'm going to let Jeudy and or Moore be somebody else's headache. Tillman is the guy. He is the X. He's going to be the target hog outside of David Njoku in this Cleveland offense when they decide to throw the football. If they have DTR back there at quarterback, not going to be very many pass attempts because he's not even completing 50%. He's basically on the Anthony Richardson track of horrible. So not going to be great. It's going to be a headache. But go get Cedric Tillman. Fade the other two because
I do think Tillman is the one that needs to be added regardless of who the quarterback is. I'm just here. I know you're newer to the chat right now. We talked a lot about the Tampa Bay receivers. There's some debate amongst us in the chat. I like McMillan. I'm a big McMillan guy myself. Josh did point out that Baker recruited Sterling Shepard, and Sterling Shepard, like it or not, kind of fits the Chris Godwin role a little bit better than Jalen McMillan does. So the long and short is we're not quite sure who's going to take the targets there. Pick your favorite, throw some fab on it. But I'll tell you right now, Sterling Shepard's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than Jalen McMillan is going to be.
Yeah, McMillan's going to be the top ad. He's going to be the guy that everybody's going to go after because he's next in the pecking order. He's the rookie. That's, who people have been kind of hyping up. And I know Gator, our co-host on Anxiety on Mondays, he's a big Jalen McMillan guy. Loved him in college. Loved him even more now that he's coming to Tampa because he's also a Bucs fan. So Jalen McMillan's going to be the guy that ultimately sees the most fab. But this is kind of that scenario like in draft season when we're talking about if you've got two players on the same team that are pretty evenly meshed, sometimes it makes more sense to just pay less for the other option. That could very well end up being the same situation here when it comes to Sterling Shepard.
I think that's a good point. Josh, you had an interesting note on Kayshon Boutte, who I think most people forgot was still in the NFL. I forgot he was still with the Patriots.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of the guy that's running in on the outside, right? He's the outside option. You see this a lot with wide receivers that kind of fit a certain prototype and certain offensive schemes that only want to play a player in a certain role. We've talked about this with Tank Dell. He's likely coming off the field in 11 personnel because he's not an outside receiver. Same thing with Jaden Reed in Green Bay. Not playing as many snaps because typically he's the guy that will play the slot in the 11 personnel. Mario Douglas plays the slot in 11 personnel. He doesn't really move outside. So when this team goes heavy tight end, Kayshon Boutte is the guy on the outside. He's the guy that's on the field. And we've seen the last couple of weeks with Drake May, he's made some plays. Now, it's one or two. It's not anything crazy. That's why he's only 98% available. Or, let me phrase that. He's only 2% rostered. So, and again, this is a really bad offense. So nobody's going to be rushing to go grab this guy. But as we talked about with the quarterbacks, Drake May has been a top 10 quarterback each of his first two starts. He has the ability to make fantasy relevant players. They just need the opportunity. If Kayshon Boutte's on the field, that opportunity is going to be there. And those one or two big plays per game can kind of turn into 3, 4, 5, 6 consistent plays a game.
Yeah. And then
these are the types of things that you do when you're looking at waivers in the middle of the season. Yeah. Who do I not need right now, but I could potentially need in 3 weeks?
Yep.
Kayshon Boutte could very easily be that guy.
And then, Josh, what did you see from that New Orleans wide receiver core that makes you think?
Well, I've seen it for 2 weeks now with Rashid Shaheed leaving week 6 early, not playing week 7. The undrafted kid, Mason Tipton, has kind of filled into that deep threat role. They're taking deep shots down the field. It's a staple of the Clint Kubiak system. Bub Means is who everybody was on last week. Bub Means is the outside guy that takes Chris Olave's spot. Mason Tipton is the guy that takes Rashid Shaheed's spot. Rashid Shaheed ain't coming back anytime soon. Chris Olave is probably going to be back in week 8.
Yeah.
So if you missed on Bub Means, that's fine. You're not missing anything because you only got one game out of him, and that was that. Mason Tipton, you might be able to get more work out of. There's going to be some hiccups. He's a young player. But if he's getting those targets that Rashid Shaheed saw, there's going to be some opportunity to where you might get some flex weeks out of Mason Tipton. And at 98% available, it's probably going to be going under the radar as well.
Yep. All right, let's knock out some chat questions. We got plenty of them. I didn't know that we could get X chat questions again. I didn't realize that was still a thing. So, but they have Ferguson and Pitts. I'm going to guess that was the ampersand and they just coded it. So Ferguson and Pitts at tight end. Would we hold Pitts or drop him for Jawan Jennings, Pop Douglas, or Josh Downs? Certainly not for Douglas or Downs. But I think there is something to be said about dropping Pitts for Jennings, Josh.
I wouldn't be dropping Pitts.
I was going to say,
I issued my public apology yesterday. He's had 3 straight weeks over 10 fantasy points. Right now, he's proving to be a reliable back-end tight end 1. I love Ferguson. I kind of put these two in very similar situations. But right now, you tell me, Ryan, which offense do you trust more, Atlanta or Dallas? Because
Atlanta, by far.
There you go. So, I mean, you can make the case that Ferguson is the top 2 target there, and maybe Pitts is not in Atlanta. But truthfully, I don't want Downs. There's got to be somebody else that you can drop, Jason. I mean, that's
kind
really
of where
what
I
it boils
stand
down
as
to.
well.
I mean, if you're looking to pick up a wide receiver, that probably tells me that you have another wide receiver in your team that sucks enough that can be replaced by Jennings.
And if there's not someone else you can drop, you don't need Jennings. So, Stephen George, would we rather have DJM or Debo rest of season? This is a tough one for me, Josh.
It really isn't. It's DJ Moore, wheels fucking up. Not DJ Moore, excuse me, Debo Samuel.
I was just going to say, I would lean Debo because of the smaller wide receiver tree. So.
Well, smaller wide receiver tree and no Brandon Ayuk. DJ Moore still has Keenan Allen.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah, is that they're just losing.
And Cole Kmet has started to evolve in this offense as well.
Yeah, a lot of competition for DJ Moore all of a sudden, even though there is probably a better quarterback there. Debo has no competition. Keeping in mind, you're probably not going to have Debo this week. Just remember that. But remember this, you're thinking playoffs now. So,
yep.
Mini Moneymaker traded Devontae for Brock Bowers. You win. Great job. You got the best tight end in fantasy football.
I was about to say, this is a slam fucking dunk. Brock Bowers, like tight end production right now is so hard to come by. And what was your stat yesterday? The top two tight ends, Bowers and Kittle, are actually the wide receiver 12 and 13 respectively on the
11
season.
and 12. Yep.
Yeah. So give me the positional scarcity of the tight end that actually is still out producing the wide receiver.
Yeah. Plus you have a dope Twitch name, Mini Moneymaker. Neil Dale Gend. I'm just gonna say Neil.
The legend.
Neil the legend.
The legend.
Damn, I am old. That's the gray in the beard there. I missed that one. I think all you're missing in this is question mark because question mark.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. The Miami offense, it's not a Tua problem. It's a Mike McDaniel problem right now.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then Tyreek isn't going to be okay when Tua comes back.
Yeah. Oscar 2 weeks ago got offered Pickens and Brooks. Pickens has an excellent schedule. I guess, am I missing who you're giving up? Yeah, I guess I don't understand what you're asking here. Maybe I missed something, but I think Pickens is good for the rest of the season with Russell Wilson. Josh and I both agree with that. Brooks is more hit or miss because the biggest issue with Brooks is if the Panthers are ass, there's no reason to overwork him at this point.
Okay, this is what he was talking about. I think it was Oscar. He's giving up Hill to get Pickens and Brooks.
No, that wasn't the person who asked about Hill.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. Oh, from earlier where they said, about, okay.
I mean, I'm fine. This is the kind of return that ideally you want to get for Tyreek Hill.
Okay, right? Now I'm remembering what we're talking about.
Yeah,
where you said let's get rid of the headache. I get it now. So
I'm fine with this. I mean, look, I'm the biggest George Pickens hater amongst this group. But the elite target share is there. That's what we talked about literally all off season. He's going to have a 27, 28, 29% target share because that's how the Arthur Smith system works. What falters and gets left behind with George Pickens is the touchdowns. Well, what does Russell Wilson do well? Play action passes.
Yeah.
If you're able to run the ball effectively, which we know Arthur Smith is going to do, he's going to run the football. Najee Harris got going, even had a rushing touchdown to close out the game. George Pickens is going to have more opportunities to hopefully find the end zone. But he has a clear path to 1,000 yards, even if it's only 4 or 5 touchdowns. Right now, I would take that over what Tyreek Hill is offering. Jonathan Brooks at this point now is a fill-in. Yes, you don't know what's going to happen. Chuba Hubbard has looked really good. His utilization score from Dwayne McFarland is exceptionally high. Obviously, with Brooks coming back, is going to cut into that workload. So it becomes more of a timeshare. But at that point, it's only a matter of time before Jonathan Brooks shows he's the more talented of the two.
I was going to say
he's going to get more run.
Chuba did not look great this past week and got bailed out by a touchdown. So there's something
exactly
there. I forgot what this was about. I would make that trade. You're getting more than most people are getting for Tyreek right now.
Yeah.
Michael Chapp, would we trade Gibbs for J-Jeff? Their other running backs are Aaron Jones, Madison, and Nick Chubb. Wide receivers are Amon-Ra, Nico, Olave. You don't need J-Jeff more than you need Gibbs. No, I'm holding on to Gibbs here.
Yeah, I'm definitely holding on to Gibbs too. Why would you even want to rush to get or trade Jahmyr Gibbs right now? I mean,
maybe because they have two Detroit Lions.
I'm always going to prioritize the top running backs over a top wide receiver. That's
I can only think maybe they don't want to overexpose themselves to the Lions a little bit, but I think Gibbs
they're
is
the
giving
best fucking offense in the NFL. That's what you overexpose yourself to.
and that's fair too. I'm just trying to give them an out here. No, don't make the trade. No.
There is no out. You don't need Justin Jefferson.
Yes. Neil the
But
Legend.
Yes, the other part of that, trade Chris Olave. That's what you do.
Yeah, trade Chris Olave. Neil the Legend is McLaurin and Cook for Bijan a good deal. The Bijan owner just lost Chris Godwin. I'll do this. I want to gamble on Bijan. I think he's going to get better as the season ends. So,
yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean,
Josh having
the last couple of weeks have been better for Bijan Robinson, but I still feel like Cook has been more consistent.
Yeah,
we know what McLaurin's done. I mean, yeah, I'm okay with it, but
turf toe worries me, plain and simple. So that's why
fair.
I'm willing to.
That's 100% fair.
Michael, I'm going to kind of counteract you here. Gibbs still has 6 touchdowns on the season, which ranks very highly among running backs. Monty also has 6, but Gibbs is getting enough touchdowns. Do not worry about Jahmyr Gibbs. I think you're worrying about something you don't need to worry about there. And then Caesar says Higgins straight up for Achane. He's loaded at wide receiver. Josh knows I'm taking this trade. I always grab the running back. So.
Yeah, I'm going to go back real quick to the Gibbs Montgomery thing. We do realize that both Gibbs and Montgomery have scored 6 touchdowns.
6 touchdowns each. Well, he's not wrong though. Montgomery might also have 6 because he's stealing from Gibbs. How many would Gibbs have as Monty?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's how timeshares work. And that's how 90% of the NFL deploys running backs. So like you're worrying about something that doesn't need to worry about. Like I said, this is the best offense in the NFL. They're going to score touchdowns in spades. There is plenty to go around. And if you have scored 6 touchdowns in 6 games, you're doing just fine. Trust me.
Yeah, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it, my guy. And then Josh, what do you think on Higgins Achane?
If you're loaded at wide receiver, go get the running back. I mean, Achane's been obviously a little disappointing because that offense as a whole has been disappointing. But while T. Higgins has out-targeted Jamar Chase, he's certainly not out-producing him. So I'm fine making that deal.
All right, guys, we are going to knock out tight ends and defense. If you have any questions, we'll get them in after that, and then we're going to wrap up the show. At tight end, again, we're not saying go get all of these guys. There are certainly 2 you should go get without a doubt, but these are the guys who we find interesting this week. Hunter Henry, 70% available. He was covered in Britt's article. Jonnu Smith is a trap, 95% available. He's going to be asked about. Noah Fant, 90% available. K. Dotton, 50% available. Jatavian Sanders, 99% available. Will Dissly, 98% available. Josh, you have a couple of notes on a few of these guys, but I want to start with K. Dotton. We got asked yesterday, who's the number 1 waiver priority this week? And it's probably Juwan Jennings. But I think K. Dotton, we're talking about the Tampa Bay wide receivers. K. Dotton is the biggest beneficiary of this injury, and we saw glimpses of that last night already. So.
I mean, this was literally a career day. I mean, 10 targets, 8 catches, 100 yards for K. Dotton. The thing that you love about K. Dotton is he doesn't leave the field. I don't think he has a single game this year where he's under 85% snap share. Last year, he didn't have a single game under like 98% snap share. Like, he is on the field. Doesn't always come with productive targets or targets in general because you have guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin taking, and even Rachaad White taking away those quality targets. But guess what? 2 of those 3 aren't on the field right now. Yeah. So that is going to lend itself to K. Dotton. But here's my fun little nugget here. Everybody knows I like to compare systems, and this is how I do my projections. Liam Cohen is the former offensive coordinator with Sean McVay. We talked all offseason about Chris Godwin filling that Cooper Kupp role. That's exactly what he has done through this season, right? Well, look back at all those times when Robert Woods got hurt, Cooper Kupp got hurt, Puka Nacua got hurt. Who was the beneficiary of targets in that system when those guys went down? Tight end Tyler Higbee. What position does K. Dotton play? Tight end. This doesn't have to be rocket science, people.
Yeah, K. Dotton is a big winner, and Josh kind of pointed it out. It may not always come with targets, but after 2 slow weeks, K. Dotton from week 3 till now when he turned it on is the tight end 5 in fantasy right now. So
yep. And you know what? Any tight end on any given week can be a top 10 tight end. If he's tight end 5 so far in the season, I think he's worth an ad.
There you go. And then Josh, obviously Otten and Hunter Henry are going to be the big priority guys, but if we're digging deep, there's a few names you want to draw people's attention to.
Yeah, there's a couple out west. Noah Fant in Seattle is back-to-back weeks over 10 fantasy points. Not great target shares, but he only has one game this season under 3 games this season so far. He's had 4 more receptions. The snap share is what's kind of been a little worrisome. The last 5 games, he's been under 75%. But if we're talking about a DK Metcalf injury that at least keeps him out for this week, you now have a streaming option with Noah Fant playing with JSN and Tyler Lockett there. Obviously, Kenneth Walker has been very involved in the passing game. But on the surface, I haven't really dug too much into the receiving numbers with Kenneth Walker, but it feels like his receptions have really just been big plays that kind of make it seem like, the receiving touch, the receiving production has kind of been there.
He did have a 6 target game a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's been 50-50 because he did not have a lot this week. He just made that enormous play for the touchdown. So.
And then my other guy, Will Dissly, I had to make an emergency pickup on Will Dissly in one of our dynasty leagues because it's a struggle bus team, and I was starting Quentin Johnston, who was doubtful, and I didn't have anybody else. I wasn't really expecting 8 catches for 81 yards, but you know what? I'll take it. He's another tight end that's benefiting from a depleted wide receiver room. The Chargers right now are dealing with a lot of injuries. Ladd McConkey came into last night's game dealing with an injury. He, still had a lot of targets, and he's the guy in that wide receiver room that's getting a ton of targets. Josh Palmer's been dealing with injuries in and out of the lineup. Obviously, Quentin Johnston missed the game. Yeah. So when you're struggling with your top 3 guys, where does the onus fall? It falls on the tight ends. It falls on the running backs. Will Dissly's kind of become a reliable target here for Justin Herbert, and he's had his most pass attempts on the season in back-to-back weeks, both 34 and 38 respectively the last 2 weeks. If a defense doesn't have wide receivers to cover, they're going to stack the box. If you're stacking the box, it's a lot harder to run. J.K. Dobbins, to me, is still catching his footing. He had explosive first 2 weeks. Hasn't really done much since, outside of just seeing a ton of targets, a ton of rush attempts. So if teams are stacking the box to take out J.K. Dobbins, you're going to pivot and you're going to throw the football. Yeah. If you don't have wide receivers to throw to, you're going to throw to the tight end. So Will Dissly becomes a streaming option at this point.
He was a late ad for me. Jatavian Sanders is a guy worth looking at. He's caught, I think, 13 balls or 11 balls in the last 2 weeks for 110 yards. I don't have a ton of details other than that volume over the last 2 weeks. Our good friend Hutchinson Brown just put out a short for football guys, which was what drew my attention to Jatavian Sanders. So take a look. If you're desperate at tight end, he'll probably clear waivers. To be perfectly honest, you probably don't need to spend a ton on Jatavian Sanders. For defense guys, if you've never seen this segment before, I only talk about the teams that I think are playable in the upcoming week. So these are teams that are more than 50% available and have decent matchups this week. The Saints get the Chargers. The Saints defense didn't look great this past week. I think the team as a general will look a little bit better. I don't think the Chargers are a bad matchup. The Bears get Washington. I was going to be a little scared of this matchup if Jaden Daniels were 100% healthy. One thing I will tell you is I've noticed the good defenses, it does not matter the offenses this season. The good defenses have ended up being playable regardless of who they're facing. The Bears have a top 5 fantasy defense right now. If it's Marcus Mariota, you bear down on this game. The Texans have been kind of hit or miss, but they get Indy. That's an easy start. The Packers get Jacksonville. Packers are the defense 3 this season. They shouldn't even be this available, but people were worried about their matchup this past week, and they did just fine. The Chiefs get Las Vegas. The Chiefs offense is struggling, but this should be a get-right game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the Chargers, the New Orleans Saints, again, if it's Spencer Rattler and there's nobody great at wide receiver, we saw the Chargers play pretty damn good defense against Arizona. I think that's a decent matchup.
Even if it's not Spencer Rattler, you're still dealing with a young, inexperienced quarterback against.
They said it would be Rattler if it's not Carr. It'll be one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the Chargers have been a good defense all season. Maybe not a great fantasy defense, but they've been a good real-life defense. This is why I was down on Kyler Murray this week. And still, the Chargers held them to 16 points. They just couldn't get their offense going. So, I love the idea of the Chargers this week. So,
all right. Quincy said they had to face Derrick Henry, Andrews, and Herbert. They had Lamar and MHJ, and MHJ choked. Hey, you're going up against Derrick Henry. I don't care. You almost have to expect to take that loss. It just sucks that you did it with Lamar having the game of the century and still not able to pull out the win. Trey Corman, 6-1. Josh, how do we feel about giving up or going and getting McCaffrey, and what would we give up for him?
I mean, we talked about this a little bit on Monday's show. When it comes to acquiring Christian McCaffrey, it's all about what do you have to give up to get him. I mean, you obviously you don't want to give up too much to where it's disrupting.
Don't ruin
gotten you to 6-1, right?
Exactly.
Because you're not going to get McCaffrey this week. The 49ers have a bye in week 9, so you're not getting him for another 3 weeks, right? So if you feel that you can withstand 3 weeks, then yeah, go trade for him. But you're not giving up anything substantial for him. You're not giving up an elite wide receiver 1. You're not giving up an elite running back. Like you're giving up wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s. You're giving up flex options. The Christian McCaffrey manager may not want that back for starters, but you also have to realize that if you go out and get Christian McCaffrey, if he's not the Christian McCaffrey that made him the 101 this year, are you still going to be 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, 9-1, right? That's what you need to examine with your team.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I just want to throw Quincy. Denver is way too rostered. Denver is my defense 1 this week. You are playing Denver in every circumstance. They just don't make the list because they are way rostered because they've been killing it for weeks now. So, and then Daniel Caps, I think he means Jordan Love or Mahomes this week. I don't understand what this question is.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Jordan Love or Mahomes this week. The flags are going to fly.
It's never Mahomes. So, or maybe he's talking about this isn't the get right game for Patrick Mahomes that I think it is. So,
oh no, he's talking about basically Mahomes gets every call. So
okay, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Yeah, that he
Jordan rules, as in like Michael Jordan.
Oh my! Okay,
that's kind of how I'm interpreting it.
Sorry,
anyway.
We're so used to start-sit questions. We're not there with you, but yes, I'll give you that. Which brings us perfectly to Mayday. You spent the fab. You drafted them way too high. It's okay to admit when you're wrong. These are the cut players, and the first one on my list for consecutive weeks now is Patrick fucking Mahomes. 96% rostered, and Josh pointed out, I'm not going to get to see the change this week, but I better see the change next week, guys. Let's get this guy below 90% rostered at the very least. He is not a great fantasy asset right now. He bailed you out with a rushing touchdown last week. Aaron Rodgers, 58% available. He's droppable. Zamir White still at 49% for some god-awful reason. Ezekiel Elliott, 36% rostered. Calvin Ridley, 76%. Cortland Sutton, 76%. Christian Kirk, 75%. And Dalton Schultz, if he's not doing it now, he ain't doing it, 57% rostered. Josh, I always like to ask you when I say these, is there any that you think I'm off base on? Is there any that should stay on a roster?
Honestly, not really. We've kind of talked about Cortland Sutton the last few weeks. Even Calvin Ridley. I mean, dude's got like 17 targets the last 2 weeks and has all of 3 catches.
Yeah.
Like at this point,
guess
it's like, why are we wasting a roster spot?
He's the one I was most worried about, except that the team is ass, because if Hopkins does get traded, does Ridley do anything for you? I still think he does.
Well, again, he should, but
yeah,
they're just not. This offense is just bad. Like Will Levis, it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde act with him. He's dealing with the AC joint issue right now. Mason Rudolph coming in and starting. Mason Rudolph's a career backup. He's not great. This offense is struggling, plain and simple.
Yeah.
It's through no fault of Calvin Ridley, but it's just reality of the situation. Again, Sutton, in theory, should be the target earner on this offense, but they just spread the football around so much. I mean, I think the stat was this was like the first time in Cortland Sutton's career where he had literally 0 targets in a game. Like absolute bagel. And really what should have been a good matchup too. So
exactly. That's what I was going to say. Killed a lot of people. And again, guys, I'm not saying drop these guys just to get them off your roster because they're a poison to your team. I'm just saying if you liked some of the guys we mentioned earlier in the show, specifically at quarterback, you can cut Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers to go get those guys. And Josh pointed out that I missed.
I'm gonna pose this question to you really quick, Ryan. If you needed a quarterback, would you drop Mahomes to go get Drake May or Bo Nix?
100%. I'm streaming, so I'm not looking at those guys as my rest of season replacement. I will drop Patrick Mahomes in any non-dynasty league to stream for the rest of the season. I might try to trade him, but there's no trade market for Patrick.
Yeah, there's no trade value with Patrick Mahomes right now.
But I'll take anything I can get for him. Like I'll throw him in on a 2-for-1 and do whatever I can. What's hilarious, Josh, is I missed this question and I wanted to bring it up as soon as he asked it, because you need to drop Jalen Tolbert for Caleb Williams before this show is over. It has to happen. You have to have Caleb Williams on your team, plain and simple. I am so excited.
His rest of season schedule is chef's kiss, baby.
Yes.
Absolute chef's kiss.
Yeah, I'm so glad you pointed that one out, Josh, because that was the one question. I almost interrupted whatever we were talking about just to answer that one. All right, guys, we leave you with always was what we're watching for in week 8. I'm going to butts out some scenarios and let Josh decide if he likes to talk about any of these. Which Tampa Bay wide receiver steps up? It's been the entire focus of the show. Or we haven't talked about this. Does Baker Mayfield turn back into a pumpkin? Does Jameis Winston fix Cleveland? But Josh pointed out he may not even be the starter. Does Russ cook against the bad Giants defense? Will we even get to see Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels, the matchup I was most excited for? Who has the better second week with their team, Amari Cooper or Devontae Adams? Is Tua Tagovailoa finally back? What does Dallas look like coming out of a bye? It was a much-needed bye. They better look better. Can CJ Stroud bounce back in a divisional game after he looked just terrible last week? Can a division rival bring out good Patrick Mahomes? Maybe the refs will help a little bit with that one. Does Daniel Jones even finish the game? I think the answer to that one's pretty no. But more importantly, at running back, how does Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy shake out? And finally, does Ricky Pearsall pull a Brian Robinson? And Brian Robinson's like first big game back from that gunshot. I think he went for like 100 yards and a touchdown, Josh.
No, I think these are all good points. I'll be honest with you. I'm very curious about the Daniel Jones one. Mostly because, like I said, I had him starting 10 games, and I want to see how close I am to that because he started 7 so far. So
well, I think he's going to start 8, but I don't know that he'll be finishing 8. So, and like you pointed out, he didn't finish this week.
I mean, and the way the Steelers offense operated with Russ, I mean, like I said,
should be a blowout.
Yeah, the Giants do have a good defense, but good defenses look bad when their offense can't do shit. And the Giants offense right now can't do shit, and Steelers have a really good defense. So this game could get really ugly very quickly. You could have another like 28-3 type game.
And Quincy Davis just puts a cherry on top of the fucking show that my man traded Mahomes and Darius Slayton for Brian Robinson and Marvin fucking Harrison. Amazing trade.
That's
this
how you do it, baby.
Is that's what you need. Amazing trade, Quincy. Like I said, this, guys, I'm going to leave it up for the rest of the show. This is the blueprint of how you should be handling Mahomes. If someone's willing to do something like this, I would have done this trade for one of those guys, let alone getting both. This is how you want to do it. Guys, that's the end of the show. Thank you so much for riding with us. 90 minutes this week. We do the show every single Tuesday, but more importantly, Club Fantasy does 12 shows a week. We go live for 10 of those shows. The only day you're not going to find a new episode of something on Club Fantasy's YouTube channel is Sunday, and that's because we're watching football so that we can get this content for you.
Hit that like button this week, by the way.
Oh, and we may have a Sunday show moving forward. So maybe 13 shows or one of them's moving. Who knows? But the long and short is, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free for you. It helps us get a little bit of money, the more people who are watching. So we very much appreciate you guys. We'll be back for this show next week. The next time you're going to see us live on air is our trade blocked dynasty trade show tonight. For Josh, I'm Ryan. You guys are awesome. We'll see you guys next week.